calm Sunday morning in the Sea of Oman, an Iranian cargo vessel named Tuska was heading toward the port of Bandar Abbas. It had been warned, repeatedly, to stop. For 6 hours, it ignored every signal, every radio call, every order. Then, a 5-inch naval cannon opened fire. What happened next was the first forceful enforcement of the American blockade on Iran, and it revealed something far more significant than a single ship being stopped. It showed exactly how the most powerful navy on Earth plans to strangle an entire nation's economy, one vessel at a time. And the way they did it is more complex and more dangerous than you might think. To understand why this particular ship mattered, you need to know what it was and what it wasn't. The Tuska, also known by its other registered name, Sahand, was not a random merchant vessel. It was a ship already flagged by the U.S. Treasury for previous illicit activities. It was under sanctions. It was known. And yet, it attempted to reach an Iranian port in the middle of an active naval blockade. That decision, to sail directly into a blockade, was almost certainly not made by the ship's captain alone. This was a test, a deliberate probe, likely ordered from much higher up, designed to answer one question: would the Americans actually follow through? The answer came in stages. And those stages tell us everything about how modern naval enforcement actually works. First came the detection. The Tuska didn't appear out of nowhere. Long before it reached the strait, it had been identified and tracked. Satellites, maritime patrol aircraft, drones, and AIS transponder data all combined to build a precise picture of every vessel in the region. The U.S. military knew the Tuska was coming before its crew probably realized they were being watched. Then came the challenge. A naval vessel positioned alongside the Tuska and began issuing formal warnings over radio. Stop. Identify yourself. Prepare to be inspected. This phase can last minutes or hours. In the Tuska's case, it went on for 6 hours. 6 hours of warnings, ignored one after another. Most ships comply at this stage. The vast majority of captains, when faced with a naval vessel ordering them to stop, will stop. They have crews to protect. They have insurance to consider. They have families waiting at home. Compliance is almost always the rational choice. The Tuska did not comply. After 6 hours of ignored warnings, the response escalated to its next phase, what naval doctrine calls an incapacitation shot. The destroyer USS Spruance, an Arleigh Burke-class vessel, fired its Mark 45 5-inch cannon, a 127mm gun, directly at the Tuska's engine room. Not the bridge, not the cargo hold, the engine room. The goal was specific: disable the ship's propulsion without sinking it. Stop the vessel without sinking it. This is a critical detail. A blockade is not about sinking ships. It's about controlling movement. A sunken ship is a diplomatic disaster, an environmental hazard, and a navigation obstacle. A disabled ship, drifting, powerless, but intact, is a message. A message that says, we are serious and we will enforce this. With its engines disabled, the Tuska went dead in the water. It drifted in the open sea, unable to move, unable to resist, unable to reach its destination. The blockade had held, but the operation was only half complete. Hours later, helicopters appeared on the horizon. MH-60S Seahawk helicopters launched from the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli, carrying a boarding team from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. These are not ordinary sailors. These are Marines trained specifically for one of the most dangerous operations in modern naval practice: boarding a non-cooperative vessel at sea. The team descended by fast rope onto the Tuska's deck, dropping from a hovering helicopter onto a moving ship in open ocean. They secured the vessel, took control, and an officer assumed command of the nearly 900-foot cargo ship, preparing to escort it to a detention port. The Tosca was captured. The first ship to physically challenge the blockade had been stopped, disabled, boarded, and seized. And in doing so, a precedent was set. What happened to the Tosca follows a specific protocol that the U.S. Navy has refined over 4 decades. It's called VBSS, Visit, Board, Search, and Seizure. And understanding it reveals just how calculated every step of this process is. VBSS training takes approximately 8 weeks, with a dropout rate of around 30%. The personnel who complete it are trained in close quarters operations inside confined metal spaces. Narrow corridors, engine rooms, cargo holds. They learn to scale wet, slippery ship hulls in darkness. They learn to descend from helicopters onto pitching decks in high winds. They learn to clear a vessel compartment by compartment, never knowing what's behind the next door. And the risks are real. A civilian cargo ship might look harmless from the outside, but there's no way to know what's inside until you're on board. There could be trained personnel disguised as crew. There could be improvised devices set as traps. The boarding team operates on the assumption that anything is possible and prepares accordingly. Each boarding operation requires a team of 10 to 14 people. One officer takes command of the seized vessel. The rest secure the ship, inspect the cargo, and manage the crew. The entire operation, from first approach to full control, can take hours. Now multiply this by the scale of the blockade. Before the current confrontation, approximately 140 ships transited the Strait of Hormuz every day. That number has dropped to less than 10%. But Iran has multiple ports spread along a very long coastline. According to naval analysts, maintaining a continuous blockade requires a minimum of 6 destroyers in permanent rotation, just to cover the eastern approach to the strait. That demands fuel, ammunition, maintenance, and crew rotations at a pace that pushes both ships and people to their limits. Hulls wear, sensors degrade, crews fatigue. This is not something that can be sustained indefinitely without cost. And yet, in just 6 days, 25 ships were turned back from Iranian ports. The Tosca was the only one that tried to force its way through. It became the example, the demonstration that the blockade is not a bluff, not a warning, not a suggestion. It is an enforcement action backed by live fire. But the story doesn't end with the Tosca, because Iran responded, and what followed raised the stakes dramatically. Within hours of the Tosca's capture, Iranian naval units began asserting their own control over the strait, and their methods were far less surgical. Reports from maritime security agencies confirmed that Iranian forces approached commercial vessels transiting the strait, including ships that had nothing to do with the blockade. An Indian-flagged tanker, the Sanmar Herald, reported being approached by 2 patrol boats. No radio contact was made first. No warnings were issued. The boats simply opened fire, damaging the ship's bridge windows. The crew was unharmed, but the message was unmistakable. A second vessel, a Malta-flagged ship, reported hearing radio transmissions stating, "We are carrying out an operation." The ship was not hit, but the crew reported seeing impacts in the water nearby. And then there was the Indian container ship Bhagya Lakshmi, departing from the UAE. This vessel received a direct radio order. "Turn back immediately. You do not have permission to cross." The crew complied. The ship reversed course. India's response was swift. The Iranian ambassador was summoned to New Delhi. India's foreign secretary expressed deep concern and urged Iran to resume facilitating safe passage for Indian-bound vessels. The pattern is clear. While the U.S. blockade targets only Iranian ports, Iran's response targets everyone. Commercial shipping from neutral nations, India, Malta, other countries with no involvement in the confrontation, is being caught in the crossfire of competing claims over who controls these waters. And this creates a problem that goes far beyond this confrontation. Because the Strait of Hormuz operates on a single, fragile principle: confidence. Ships transit because they believe it's safe enough to do so. Insurance companies provide coverage because the risk is calculable. Ports accept cargo because the supply chain is predictable. The moment that confidence breaks, the moment captains start refusing to enter the strait, insurers start declining coverage, and supply chains start rerouting, the economic damage becomes exponential, not because of what actually happens, but because of what people believe might happen. To appreciate the sheer scale of what the U.S. Navy is attempting, consider the assets currently deployed. 3 carrier strike groups, led by the USS Abraham Lincoln, the USS Gerald R. Ford, and the USS George H.W. Bush. 10 destroyers, 2 amphibious assault ships, littoral combat ships, unmanned underwater vehicles for scanning operations. In total, approximately 27 naval vessels, representing roughly 41% of all active U.S. combat ships currently deployed worldwide. 41%, nearly half of America's operational fleet, concentrated in a single theater. That is an extraordinary commitment of resources, and it tells you how seriously this situation is being treated. But it also reveals a vulnerability. Every destroyer patrolling the strait is a destroyer that isn't patrolling somewhere else. The Pacific, the South China Sea, the Mediterranean. Naval power is finite, and concentrating it in one place means accepting risk in others. The blockade functions not as an impenetrable wall, but as what analysts call a permeable net. It doesn't need to stop every ship. It needs to stop enough ships to make the economics unworkable, to drive up insurance costs, disrupt logistics chains, and make it financially impossible for Iran to sustain its oil exports. In 6 days, that net has caught or turned back 25 vessels. The Tuska was the only one that forced a physical confrontation. Every other ship, when faced with the reality of the blockade, chose to turn around. And that is perhaps the most important measure of a blockade's effectiveness. Not how many ships you shoot at, but how many ships never even try. The ceasefire is set to expire within days. The strait remains contested from both sides, one side enforcing a blockade, the other asserting total control. Commercial shipping from neutral nations is caught in between, with captains and crews making impossible decisions about whether to cross. The Tuska answered one question: the blockade is real, and it will be enforced with force if necessary. But it raised a dozen more. How long can a naval force of this size sustain continuous operations at this intensity? What happens when neutral nations, India, China, European shipping companies, decide the risk is no longer acceptable? What happens to global energy prices if the strait remains in this state of contested control for weeks or months? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, what happens when the next ship decides to do what the Tuska did, but this time doesn't stop? The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide, but right now it feels like the narrowest passage on Earth. If this helped you understand what's really happening in the Gulf, subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out the other videos on our channel. We're breaking down every development as it unfolds.